Good evening and welcome. This is the 9th iteration of the Here.Here concert series here at Eclectic and also online being streamed. I'm Emmanuel Waeckerlé, and it's with great pleasure that we are welcoming tonight Seamus for the premiere, actually, of a new set of songs, the British premiere, yes. The British premiere of your new set of songs for schismic concertina and voice. I wanted to ask, how do you pronounce schismic?
I guess schismic, but I don't really know. Schismic.
Schismic, yeah, concertina and voice, called Traces of Alexander J. Ellis. So Seamus is a British musician, a writer, a performer based in Amsterdam. And he's also the co-organizer of the DNK concert series. His music is usually a combination of songwriting and minimal acoustic instrumental composition. And the work we're going to experience tonight has inspired the theme for our 3 concerts of the 4th series of Here.Here concert. We have chosen works that rely upon the voice or other sonic events coming from elsewhere, literally, metaphorically, or through technology. So this new set of songs of Seamus is a real labor of love. And these are my words, not his. And I see them as a kind of an iceberg of extensive research into the work of a little-known Victorian gentleman and his investigation of musical pitch and just intonation, using a concertina and tuning forks. This research was conducted at the Royal Conservatory of The Hague, pretty much during whole of lockdown, starting before.
The end of it started before, but ended, the final 4 months was the beginning of the lockdown.
And, but during this research, I believe Seamus came to London quite a few times to visit the archives of Ellis. So it's great that we give the first premiere here to bring back this set of songs here. So tonight, Seamus is going to be embodying with his voice and concertina playing some of Ellis' words and findings in a way perhaps that he may have done 150 years ago. He has tuned a 1926 Wheatstone concertina in a tuning suggested by Ellis in the late 1800s. And the songs use Ellis' words borrowed from his private and public archive. So as Seamus has written in a series of letters addressed to Ellis himself in a thesis on his and Ellis' work, I quote, "The elements are yours, the traces, the words, the tuning system, and the gestures of playing you would have experienced yourself. But the body, the voice, and performance psychology in the middle of these elements is mine." So it's with great pleasure that we welcome Seamus, who's going to do a straight set of the songs. Then we'll have a little break, and after that we'll have a conversation and some questions. Thank you.
Thank you. So the first piece is called 19th Century Music. Temperature on harmonium reads was so far as I So, yeah, these are, as Emmanuel said, thanks for that introduction. These are all pieces which are somehow inspired by or informed by research, writing of Alexander Ellis. I think most of you have a little program note, so you can see each of the songs. They're all kind of extracted from letters or papers, or also from the probably what Ellis is most known for is his translation of Helmholtz and the book On the Sensations of Tone as a physiological basis for the theory of music. I think it's even a little bit longer than that, the subtitle. But Ellis, yeah, we know that book as On the Sensations of Tone, but obviously it was written in German. So actually, you really read Ellis in this book, and it is an incredible book. Yeah, it's like one of the grand narratives, I guess, I don't know. And Ellis, when he translated this book, it was quite late in his career, he didn't just translate it because he was a mathematician himself, also a musician. He tested a lot of the theories himself with his own instruments or by measuring the tunings of other instruments. And a lot of this is put into footnotes within the translation. So there'll be a chapter about the physiology of the ear, sympathetic vibrations in the ear, and Ellis will add a footnote where he's made a test or he's observed something himself which is based on Helmholtz's research. So he added something like 150 pages of footnotes, and he also added something like 150 pages of appendix. And part of that appendix is a chapter about instrument tuning, and he mentions lots of different instruments. One of the instruments he mentions is a concertina, and he talks about the just English concertina, which is something that he tuned, or he had tuned. And this is a common concertina still in use in folk music, and it had 14 notes to the octave. But he mentioned another tuning, which was called schismic tuning, which really needs more notes to the octave to work effectively. Now, I don't want to get too technical, but Pythagorean tuning is very simple. It's just fifths, and if you tune enough fifths, you start to get some interesting intervals which are very close to just intervals. And yeah, the schismic tuning is what somebody had actually advised me to do it, and it was a good advice. And because this instrument has 24 pitches available in one octave, you can hear these different pitches. And actually, I'll just demonstrate. This is a Pythagorean major chord, which Ellis says is rather horrible. So this is C, E, G. But if you use F flat instead of C, which is counting fifths backwards, it's much more consonant. So this is Pythagorean, and this is one schisma away from a just intonation 5:4 ratio, which is the fifth harmonic. So I didn't expect to talk that much, but that's a little introduction. The first piece, or the first song, was called Observations, and that was taken from a paper which was about the temperature. Let me read. It's called On the Influence of Temperature on Harmonium Reeds. I think it's probably from about 1870. And this piece is called Thanks, and this is from a paper called On the History of Musical Pitch, where Ellis collected different A frequencies from many places. He ended up with 223 different A's, which I don't think he put them onto tuning forks, but other people have put them onto tuning forks, made measurements of them around Europe. And these A's, they ranged from F sharp to C sharp, about a quarter tone sharp. So A was a very broad idea, even back in the late 1800s. The A on this is a quarter tone sharp, and that was its tuning in 1926. So the standardization that we get on the piano now is extremely modern. Anyway, this is called Thanks. To arrive at these results has been a work of time, labor, and expense, far, far beyond I could have anticipated. I could never obtain them at all. I could never obtain them at all. collection of numerous friends and assistants. Hereby to tender my most hearty to arrive at these results has been a work of time. Thanks. So, the concertina is a bit like a early accordion, but actually all the good ones are made in London. This is a Wheatstone concertina. Concertina, it just has one same note in and out, and there's just one note for each button. But with an accordion, quite often you have this sound where you hear one note, and then you press a button, and every time you play that note, two notes happen, like this. It's called musette tuning. And with Pythagorean music, there's this kind of age-old problem that if you have a nice interval like a fifth, and you tune it 12 times to an octave, it's no longer an octave. It's sharp. So when you go 12 fifths up from C, you reach a note called B sharp, which sounds like this, which is pretty rough. But the interesting thing is, so this is it's called a Pythagorean comma. You might hear people talking about commas. This is Pythagorean comma. It's about 24 cents. But it happens to sound a little bit like a musette tuning. It's a little bit bigger, I think. So it gives a kind of warmth to the sound. And these are two pieces called Pythagorean musette number 1 and Pythagorean musette number 2. So, in the British Library, there is a set of folios from a piano tuner called Alfred Hipkins, who was the tuner for Broadwood pianos in the late 19th century. And between him and Ellis, well, I think Ellis pretty much taught Hipkins how to tune a piano in equal temperament. One of the reasons he could do this was that he instigated the idea of a musical scent. So before, if you wanted to measure intervals, you measured them in vibrations per second, but with the scent, it made calculations somewhat easier, and the scent divided the octave even to 1200 small fractions, decimals. But Hipkins was a piano tuner, and the folios in the British Library are his, but within those folios and there's some letters from incredible people in there. So piano tuners were important in this time, and Hipkins probably implemented the teaching of equal temperament to all piano tuners in London, and maybe also in Europe as well. Everything was very connected, and in order to connect, they would send each other tuning forks. So you'd get a tuning fork from Steinway, and it would be 456 hertz, and it would be an A, and a tuning fork from Paris, and it would be 427 hertz, or all kinds of different things. Everybody had very different ideas. But slowly, there was a need for standardization, and A440 became the go-to tuning, although it took a long time, I think. But anyway, the equal temperament part of the piano, where all the intervals are tuned with the same distance between them, which is 100 cents, that was pretty much implemented by Hipkins. Anyway, I'm digressing. The folios contain a lot of letters from Ellis to Hipkins, and there are no letters back. I have actually yet to locate an official Ellis archive. If anybody knows of it, please tell me. But yeah, these letters, many of them are extremely I wouldn't say tedious, but it's data. He's sending data, and Ellis is measuring instruments, and he's telling Hipkins about the instrument that he measured this week, the bagpipes or a vina or different things, and he's always very happy that he's measured these things. And often within the letter there will be something like an Excel sheet handwritten in ink pen, 3 pages long, with a lot of logarithmic numbers noted, for sometimes pages and pages and pages. So there's a kind of, I wouldn't say stiffness, but of extreme formality in these letters. And Ellis always signs off, truly yours, A.J. Ellis. I think they only met, in fact, the letter of their first meeting is the invitation to meet from Ellis, is, I think, from around about 1870 something, and Ellis is saying, meet me in room Q of the South Kensington Museum, which is now the Victoria and Albert Museum, and they're gonna measure some stuff with a tonometer, which is something like 40 or 50 tuning forks tuned within an octave, and when you count the beating with the closest tuning fork, you can pretty much say this is so many vibrations per second. And then if you do some more logarithms, you can turn that into cents. And so, but anyway, there's this formality, A.J. Ellis, all the way through. Dear Mr. Hipkins, A.J. Ellis, you're truly yours, A.J. Ellis. One of the last letters, which is in the very late 1880s, Ellis basically says, Dear Mr. Hipkins, I want, well, I'm going to sing the words in a minute, but basically he's he's saying, can I visit you to show you my tuning forks and choose which ones you would like to have, and decide where we put the other ones. I'm going to keep these ones, blah, blah, blah. But what's very beautiful about this letter, he's giving away his tuning forks, which have probably been a very important part of his life, and that he's built a very large collection of probably the best tuning forks in Europe. It's a very poignant letter, and he signs it Alex J. Ellis, and it's the first time that he uses his name Alex. So it's quite beautiful. And the next, I think there's one more letter, and the next letter announces his death. So it's quite poignant. And this is called If It Would Not. If it would not inconvenience you, I should like next Sunday, soon after 3. Therefore, people call to bring down to your house all my forks other than the measuring fork, to go over them with you, and to select what you think would be fit to give with the measuring forks, to say South Kensington Museum, and what you would like to put in your own collection. I have some largish forks, they have all been carefully measured. Test forks measured by MacLeod and Meyer should, I think, accompany the measuring forks. Let me know if you could receive me Truly yours, Alex J. Ellis. This is another another letter to Hipkins, and this one is also sort of, it shows a kind of playfulness from Ellis, and also, of course, it's about tuning forks. But it's obvious that they've had a conversation about tuning forks and whether they are the same frequency when they're vibrating on an object or vibrating in air. Often with a tuning fork you put it on an object and you can hear it more loudly. So maybe they had a disagreement about whether it was true or not, and Ellis went away and did the experiments, and this is what he said. You're a mark. No, I'm going to start out again. You're a mark on beats. Or on a table. Make a series of experiments. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. One fork over the other in air, both over one jar, each over separate jars. Jar tuned wrong, too sharp, too flat, and so on in more than a dozen ways. But no difference could be felt in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So if there are difference, it is less than 0.05. I still have some to try. The question is interesting. Much pleasure. So the reason I'm counting to 20 there is because in order to get a reading from a tonometer, you find the closest pitch. You have an octave of tuning forks tuned very closely together. You find the one which is closest to the note that you play, and then you count beats over 20 seconds. And the amount of beats you get, beats you get over 20 seconds, you then do a little bit of logarithmic maths. Somebody probably is much better at explaining maths than me, that's for sure. And then you have your frequency, and this 20 seconds was apparently like torturous for, especially for musicians, to hold a note for 20 seconds. It's not something, there was no Vondelweiser back in the late 1800s, and a lot of these musicians were from Indonesia or India. This is the time of the great exhibitions. Especially during the Great Exhibition, he invited musicians to room Q at the V&A, at the South Kensington Museum, and tortured them by making them play notes for 20 seconds. And it actually is quite painful with that as well. So that's actually, this is going to be the last piece. This is also a funny, one of his kind of beautiful interventions, and it's Helmholtz is writing about the ear, and he's writing about the drum of the ear, but also there's another kind of flexible chord which is part of the ear, and I don't know the name of it from the top of my head, But there's something that happens when a chord is stretched, it's never ever straight. And Helmholtz is describing this, and Ellis is like, oh, that's interesting, because I know this quote from somebody that he attributes the quote to somebody called Vince. I'm not sure who that is, but actually this quote probably comes from somebody else, and it's there somewhere on Wikipedia to find out. But the quote is, it's all about when you stretch a rope, you cannot make it straight, no matter how much you stretch it. And it's written in those program notes. It's called Hence No Force. Can stretch a chord, however fine. Into horizontal line, so as to it truly straight. Hence no force, however great, can stretch a chord, however fine. Into so as to make it truly straight. Thank you. Thank you, Emmanuel and Harry, and also everybody at Eclectic. It's been really great to play. Thanks a lot. And it actually was the premiere, but I did a half premiere in January 2020, but that was just 3 of the pieces. So, yeah, thanks a lot. Cheers.
So, welcome back, and thank you, Seamus, for this wonderful concert.
Thank you.
And I'd like to welcome Harry Worley. We are the co-curators of the Here.Here concert series, which is a research project. We're both working at University for the Creative Arts, and we've been doing the Here.Here concerts for, this is the 4th season, trying to bring into dialogue our different interest in experimental music and extended scores and a kind of certain interdisciplinarity approach to music. So, I am a bit speechless actually after this concert, and maybe my first question would just be, how was it for you?
Yeah, it was, I don't know what to say. It was, obviously it was very, very nice. I mean, it really is like a premiere. Last week I did a little private showing in Amsterdam, and I had performed it in 2020 and once privately in 2021, but not so many pieces. And yeah, it's, I was very kind of concerned about the idea of a camera being there. That's been preoccupying me a bit. But I somehow managed to ignore it and not, I probably didn't open my eyes for an hour. But yeah, it's beautiful to play. Yeah, really, I'm really happy that I just did it. Yeah. So thank you. Thanks for.
So the temptation is to get more and more technical, isn't it?
Yeah, well, yeah,
but
could be.
I had an experience in the second piece where, and I was talking to you over there to try to find a way to make it sound like this isn't a really rude question. But a little bit down the back of my spine went because I felt a lot of the sort of the fact that we're so used to just intonation or equal temperament rather, means that we get very accustomed to that particular sound. And when we're challenged by things that have other tunings, it takes some time to maybe settle into it. Do you feel that, because you work with this so much, that you have totally settled into these tuning systems? What's your experience when you move from one to the other? Has equal temperament ruined harmony for you? Or what's your experience between moving between these tuning systems?
Yeah, well, I have 3 different instruments like this with the same fingering system. One's smaller and one's bigger. The other 2 are equal temperament. And if I try to play this music on equal temperament instrument, it sounds terrible, really, really terrible. But so when I play those instruments, I can't do this because this music, I've only worked on it in this tuning, and it really is about the tuning. So I can switch to equal temperament, but I can't switch this repertoire to equal temperament. Yeah. I mean, actually, I am planning. I've been working on some music with somebody in Berlin, playing folk music, and I think next time we play, we're going to use this instead of equal temperament because he's skilled with just intonation stuff. So it will be interesting to do try and do folk music using these sort of extended intervals. Yeah, but switching is possible. I don't hate equal temperament. I mean, many people do, but I'm not one of those. And yeah, it's in many ways it's easier equal temperament because there's less notes. But yeah.
So picking up on the folk part of that, because it's the thing that you didn't really talk about really in your sort of intervals between your pieces.
Yeah.
Very pleased with that joke. But it really smooths some of the timbre of the instrument.
Yeah.
And it occurred to me a little bit that, you know, it's a sort of science folk thing going on here. You're trying to recreate maybe some sort of, or create some folklore-like narrative around something which is otherwise incredibly dry. You know, it's logarithmic tables and numbers and things like that. I mean, it excites some people, but not everybody all the time.
Yeah.
How do you approach that sort of bit of a paradox?
Yeah, it's interesting because I don't think of it as a sort of folkloric interpretation of scientific stuff, but I totally get what you're saying. So I think it's narrative. There's a sort of narrative element, and it's also sort of illustrative of tune. It's like a little bit about the tuning. A lot of tuning music is about tuning, which sometimes I'm a bit critical of, but maybe it's necessary because tuning is so strange. You know, we're just not used to it. But there is a. I get it. There is a folk. No, there is this kind of folk narrative, but I'm not forcing it. It's just happening. Yeah, and I'm also trying to enjoy the music. Like in the beginning, I tried to be very strict and not expressive in the voice, and now I sort of let myself do a little bit of melisma, or I let a little bit. Maybe I sing a few more notes than are actually there on the instrument, and sometimes I'm not really sure what those pitches might be. I know what the pitches are, but the ratios. But I've digressed a bit, but there definitely is a narrative. So that's kind of, I guess, very folk-like. I think storytelling, singing, and also if I think about the tuning, and if you listen to pipes and harmoniums and church organs, often they have pipes which are tuned, are flattened or sharpened, just to give a little bit more colour. And I hear that now. Like I listen to bagpipes, I'm like, oh yeah, this is flatter, this is flatter, this is sharper, and you really hear that people are just doing it in some traditions, and also singers. I think when people sing without instruments, they don't sing the piano tunings. They flatten and sharpen just to make it sound as nice as possible. Anyway, digress a bit. Yeah.
But maybe I come to that from another angle, that folk element in a way, which is in the rest of your work, this kind of very contemporary folk, but very new music at the same time. And that's what I did find fascinating after listening to this song. And we had a conversation as well when I was writing. You were kind of contesting that word folk in relation to this set of songs. But it's hard not to think of it. And that's what I find beautiful, because the words are Ellis and very Victorian, and he's a very Victorian man, and the way you introduced him. The tuning is his, from 150 years ago, or maybe a bit more. Yeah. But the songs are definitely yours, the melody are yours. The way you have completely embodied them is quite fascinating, and how you can see that evolving throughout the songs, bringing more and more of your way, your particularly folk way. And that's what I find fascinating, is the way that there is a great kind of meeting of across time of these two very different people. Kind of very affluent Victorian gentleman who, had the means to kind of do all this research and the passion to do so. And attention to details, and you have the same characteristic, and you have done in a way what he has done to the work of Helmut's, adding footnotes and trying it and adding to it, but at the end making it completely yours. If I didn't know the whole story behind the song, I could listen to it like your other works, like the anecdotes and the other CD, which, by the way, are by the door, if you're interested. So that's what I'm kind of...
I mean...
Did you expect that, the question behind?
Well, I think, because, we did speak about it a bit. I think I said that I thought of it as pre-folk music, but I think that's very much the technical side of it. So it could be, maybe it is a kind of folk music, I guess. to some extent. And the having Ellis as a subject, it feels like a weight. You know, this is a very important person who is known to, you know, if you read Parch, if you speak to most people who know about the history of tuning, they know who Ellis is. He wasn't a minor player. So for me to come along and kind of embody his words and tune his instrument, and it is a bit, what's the word? Like I've lost the word, but I don't want to kind of, I find it very important, his place very important, and me, I'm just this musician, and who am I to represent him in any way faithfully? Like, I know him through his writing, his books, his translations, his letters, and his maths, but I don't really know him. I can predict things about him sometimes through letters. So it feels like a responsibility, and I'm sort of committed to that, and I hope nobody is offended by it. I'm not sure what it would be, but I imagine somebody could be, you know, but I hope not, and yeah, I'm not sure what else to say.
Well, you feel a sense of responsibility.
Yeah, there's a sense of responsibility, and also there's this mixing, like it's him, like actually if you just look at the data, the words and the instrument, it's him, but it comes out of me, and I've spent hours or years working on it. So it's this mixing in the end, and I know him a bit. I hope we would have been sort of be able to get along together and maybe do some experiments or something, but I can't know that for sure. So yeah, sometimes I feel like I might be being presumptuous in my interpretation of him, but I hope not.
But in the end, the songs are yours.
Yes, yeah.
And belong to your repertoire, and don't diverge from what you have done. That's what is quite extraordinary. Yeah, so maybe just my last question is in relation to what the concertina, playing the concertina, has brought in a way to your composing and music making, because you were not using it before, if I was aware.
Yeah, well, it's Ellis says it himself in footnotes about the tuning of the concertina. It's a horrible sounding instrument, he calls it, and it's very harsh, this thing. If you try and record it, it's very difficult. It sounds like today we had to really work on where we put the microphones. So I often feel that there's a lot of pleasure for me in playing this instrument, but it's harsh and loud, but somehow it's like it's my guitar, you know, like people strum guitars, and that's my guitar. And what it's brought, I think, it's brought a lot of limitations actually, because firstly, I'm not very virtuosic or versatile with it. Like I don't have the technique of a lot of folk concertina players. I've only been kind of playing it for about 10 years, and I've changed systems twice. So I've changed my fingering system twice, so it's like relearning the instrument because the notes are in different places. So it slows me down, and I think that's why a lot of the music is quite slow. It slows me down, and it limits me to this voice and instrument and the room, but I enjoy it, this limitation. I enjoy it to some extent, but I feel drawn towards working without the concertina as well. So sometimes I want to work with it, sometimes I want to work without it. And probably if I keep this repertoire going, I really want to I have another repertoire actually, but I want there to be no concertina in that repertoire, because it has limits, you know, has limits of how much can you stand listening to this thing? You know, I don't think it's very Spotify friendly. I want to be Spotify friendly. No, that's not true. Not true. Yeah.
Well, I'll just make maybe one final question from us, and then we open it out a little bit. But I think, you know, talking about slowing down, and it occurred to me really that there was, you know, one of the pieces, if you had like a pulse that was superimposed onto it by you through rhythmically playing, whereas most of it, the pulse came from the beats itself, you know. So there's a constraint there that if you like play faster, that sort of deep reason to have kind of rhythms that come from the tuning itself is gone. Yeah. And the one that you did, of course, was a play on that. So it's a kind of study on time. Yeah. And you're talking about the constraints that the Victorians had on, you know, they're obsessed with time. Right. Yeah. Weren't they? Yeah. You know, for many reasons, trains and navigation and all these kinds of things. Yeah. So I can't, you know, I think that, you know, it's a real study in time, and I thought that was a very beautiful way to deeply illustrate it. You know. Thanks.
Timeless.
So it wasn't a question, really. It was just
it is a kind of time thing. Yeah. And it is a kind of time thing, and we talked about ventriloquism. It wasn't actually me that came up with this, but somebody said this was like a kind of act of ventriloquism. So I'm the dummy, and Ellis is the master, and I quite like that actually, being the ventriloquist dummy, but that maybe controls himself. I don't know.
Well, you're a dummy without a master. He's no longer here.
Yeah, but I like the play with. I like this kind of time. I was saying to Harry, actually, I do feel this kind of shame about Victorian wealth when I walk around places like Burlington House I went to today, where Ellis used to deliver papers when the Royal Society was there, and going to, I don't know, well, the British Library is more modern, isn't it? But these buildings that he inhabited, they were built on somebody else's labour, and that is a bit confronting sometimes. I'm a bit like, wow, how did this luxury come about that somebody could?
There's a long history of that, you know, going to the philosophers, you know, Pythagoras and those. Yes, you know, those right. They also had the luxury of time.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Is there any question from anybody? Yes, Chris?
Seamus, did you come across any indication in your study and research on Ellis to do with whether his inquiry into tuning and ratio was part of a broader inquiry into nature or reality or the material world per se?
Oh wow!
Sorry.
Yeah, no. It's a big one. I didn't. I think not. That project hasn't arisen. But there is a very beautiful. There's this very beautiful the nature idea with harmony. There's a beautiful quote in Alex Ross's "The Rest Is Noise," where Sibelius apparently gave a lecture about harmony, and he was talking about the harmonic series of a meadow. And it's just like, wow. And apparently everybody just, he's crazy, that guy. And I think maybe he was a bit crazy, but those kind of things like, wow, yeah, the harmonic series of a meadow. And so, I have not really studied things like that, but I find it interesting, but currently I don't have. I love nature, and I walk a lot, and I sometimes take this into nature. I've made some recordings with it, Like I tried to play a harmonic series into a meadow once, and actually I ended up communicating with some kind of insect, which was every time I played a note, it went. I'm touching on these things, but not in any scientific way. The just intonation, I'm not like I have friends that are really, really very advanced at it, and I'm coming at it very much from a practical. I tune the instrument, so I'm very practical, and I'm coming up from a practical singing. It's like I've made myself a tool, and trying to learn to sing the intervals actually that's very natural. It's really difficult, and I don't think I'm not hitting the intervals correctly because my brain is so programmed in equal temperament. So I have to listen. If I don't listen for the instrument, I might sing it a little bit sharp or flat, or more sharp or flat than I would with a piano. So it's quite hard to retrain this, to go like, what does D sharp in relation to F flat sound like? And then you just have to sing a bit flat or a bit sharp, and you might get it. But I think, the real perfection of just intonation, that's just a bit too much for me, I think. So I'm not a massive purist, I guess. Yeah, thanks.
A question?
Oh.
I was going to ask about whether it's very technical tuning and it's absolutely fascinating and it was all amazing. But I was going to ask if the singing was quite intuitive, which you kind of answered. But I suppose that also makes me wonder about the whole process of making the songs. Is that kind of intuitive, or do you have a kind of process behind how you're,
Yeah, well, the process. I mean, mostly the process is find some words and then break them up, so they're shorter than sentences. And then in like a normal kind of songwriting practice looking for melodies to sing the words in with. And yeah, that's sometimes I'm trying to deliberately shift keys and things, but the singing is very intuitive. So I'm deliberately not playing everything in the same key, this kind of thing. That's actually a nice thing with this kind of tuning is you can play it in different keys. Mostly just intonation is fixed to one fundamental because these are fifths. There's a lot of there's lots of them have a practically just major third or practically just minor third, but yeah, it is intuitive, the songwriting. I think like I'm trying to enjoy it, and I started out very much being very precise, but actually the more that I get to know the pieces, I'm trying to let myself just be a bit, have some fun with it. Life's too short, I think, like to just be dry, all the time. And that's something maybe coming with age, I'm not sure, but yeah. So 2 years has been enough to let me go, instead of just, yeah. So yeah. Thanks.
Yes. Maybe the microphone for people online.
Yeah.
Mine goes.
Thank you. So I actually have a couple of questions. The first is his tuning forks. Are they still at the V&A? And has anyone actually tested them to see whether they're at the pitches they're supposed to be at? Because given that they had to measure tones by comparison with the tuning forks, how do they measure the tuning forks? Yeah. Other than presumably comparison with other tuning forks. And the second question is, I don't know if anyone has ever compared the experience of a synesthete who, for example, sees colours associated with certain pitches, and compared the experience listening to equal temperament to just temperament. Yeah. But if you had to bet, do you think that they would have a better time and a better experience listening to just temperament or equal temperament?
Okay, I think, well, let's do that one first. We do that one first. I think just intonation is pretty, to just hear it immediately, it's too strange to really feel that it's normal. So it feels very peculiar. It feels less peculiar maybe if you hear it within a non-Western perspective, like in Indian music or or Indonesian music, where tuning is a little bit more arbitrary, or not, like a bit more what's the word? Organic, yeah, a bit more intuitive. You know, you go to one village in Bali and they tune the scale like this. It's the same scale, but a bit different. But I think just intonation, you have to sort of sneak it in a little bit, and not. I find if you talk about music as being, this is just intonation music, then I think it can put people off a little bit. And I think now there are actually really fantastic musicians in Europe and Britain. Sorry, I had to say that. That are working with just intonation in a way which maybe you don't hear it, but it's very pure what they're doing. It might sound a little bit out of tune. It's kind of searching music, and in this kind of searching, that's a nice way to introduce it, I think. So yeah, full on just intonation, it can be very bombastic, and it works for some people, but it's it's an acquired taste, I guess. But I'd love to see. I wouldn't be surprised if in the next 20 years it becomes much more common to be hearing kind of pop music. I mean, there's already quite good pop music being made with just intonation, and it's exciting. So people are into it. You know, guitarists are refretting their guitar. I refretted a guitar for somebody recently. They're refretting their guitars and going like, oh wow, yeah, it's different. So it's happening, yeah. And the question about tuning forks, yeah. I mean, Helmholtz, it's all there. Like he describes sounds. Simple sounds don't exist. Like a single sine wave doesn't exist until you make one. So he made one. So he made a sine wave, and he made it audible. But most of the book, he's talking about how every sound is complex. So when you've got, let's say when you've got a sine wave, you can tune a tuning fork to it. If it doesn't beat, it's in tune. And these tonometers, and there's two kinds. One is a kind of reed organ, I think. The other is literally, I think it's 40, it's Schreibler, I think, is the tonometer, or Schiebler or Scheibler, I'm not sure. His tonometer, which Ellis had, it's 40 or 50 forks tuned from 220 to 440 hertz. They're 4 hertz apart, I think. And with this beat counting, you can accurately say what it is. You know, that's what the Victorians did. They measured stuff and they said, this is it. And they sent each other tuning forks. So you get your organ and you make a tuning fork and you tune that A. Somebody keeps it. Maybe, you know, who knows what was actually right. When Ellis gathered those pitches, the A's from different organs around Europe, he only did it with organs that had not been retuned in modern times. So there's so many churches which have already been put into equal temperament at that time. Or the A has been standardized. Actually, not necessarily in equal temperament, but the A has been standardized. But also in that paper, there's 223 tuning forks. If you read, he lists where they all come from. And one of them is like a tuning fork dug up near Brixton. You know, really, for real. It's just like, oh, it's been buried in the ground, tuning fork. This is an A, you know. But it's very beautiful. Look, some people say Ellis was like, he took liberties with saying the truth of what A was, but he really did gather these A's, and he measured them. Yeah. I think there were a lot of people busy with that in France, Germany, England. Yeah.
Maybe you can say that you made a piece of work.
Oh yeah, and I actually tuned 74 tuning forks. I tuned these tuning forks. So the 223 I reduced to the Hertz frequencies. So if there were 3 forks in the same Hertz, like 401 Hertz, if there were 3 forks, I'd just tune 1. So I made 74 tuning forks across 74 Hertz from F sharp to C sharp, and I actually retuned them a little bit so they're all related to one fundamental. Sometimes I had to go a little bit more than 1 Hertz. So I've got this set of tuning forks tuned to 480 Hertz. And yeah, there will be a bit of music coming out in August, I hope. Touch wood. Touch wood, yeah.
And maybe we'll listen to some of it in the Here.Here concert of May.
Yeah.
When Seamus will be coming back and we'll be hearing some of the work around the tuning forks.
Yeah.
Is there a last question, maybe before? No? So it's been fascinating. Thank you, Seamus, and a great way to spend time together. It's so rare these days that it feels even more special, and especially at Eclectic, which is such a wonderful space.
Everybody's talking about it in Berlin, in Amsterdam.
Yes.
For real.
And the next Here.Here concert, Harry, do you want to say a few words?
Yes, that's on the 3rd of March. That'll be quite different, in fact. There'll be some cello, which is being manipulated with electronics based on a commission that I had to celebrate 850 years of Salisbury Cathedral in its current location. Some music out of a group called Sea of Cables. Good luck, Isa. It's literally based on the amount of cables. And Mike McAvoy, who's working with Image and cello and piano and guitar.
So the theme would be ventriloquy of space.
Of space.
Continuing on the theme of embodiment of something else this time. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Seamus, so much.
Thank you. Thank you.